We are live.
Yes, we are.
Yes. You wanted to talk about. Oh, we have Fatima and Ghost Bunny here, and Soha in the live chat. Oh, and
hmm
Mortad Skeptic, and AGA, and James, and Katie. You wanted to.
Oh,
You wanted to talk about this article that you saw, hey?
yeah. Um, I thought this would be interesting to cover
Mm,
because a lot of people have what could be described as a quote unquote woke breaking point.
right.
And this is an article written by someone who um, detailing, what changed their mind about some of the um, dogma that they had taken on.
You're interested in this article because you went through something similar. You were part of the Pakistani Mujahideen, right? And
Oh yeah, baby.
you, you're you were associated, you were close to the Antifa type people, right?
Yeah,
Um,
those are very distinct,
yes,
definitely, but they were similar for me
right,
personally.
right.
But
And
generally, I would not say that they're the same.
so, and then you read this article and you related to it and you wanted to highlight this, right? By the way, this is
hmm
written by the. I know some people don't like the Quillette, but I just wanted to give them credit anyways. This was written by the Quillette. This was written by the activist that left the woke mob, right? Is it
hmm
that's her? And it's her, right?
hmm
This is a picture. Okay. Is this a picture of her while she was?
Yes.
Okay. So why did she choose this picture as the cover? Autistic pride means my hands are never quiet.
Well,
I don't
she
understand.
is autistic,
Mhm.
and so this is just an example that she gave of how she would present herself when she was involved in this form of activism.
Oh, okay. I mean, what does this mean though?
Well, we can get into it.
Huh.
It's uh, quiet hands is a part of a behavioral therapy that is kind of controversial in the autism community. There's
Mm.
a specific um, type of therapy. Not it's not a therapy. It's like what they call um, almost like a mandate, and it's called quiet hands.
Mhm.
Because some people who are autistic have tics or repetitive behaviors,
Mhm.
which is often materializes as hand flapping for some people, not all people. And
Huh.
so part of this behavioral therapy is this
Shorter answer.
thing called quiet hands.
Okay. Okay.
So she's
Cool.
saying part of being prideful of my autism is that my hands are never quiet.
All right. Let's go into the article.
Yes. Okay. So this is by, wait, what's her name? Lucy Cross Wallace?
Yes.
Yes. Good memory, Susanna. Okay. So I knew a few social justice campaigners in high school. They were advocates. They liked to remind us, wait, the banner is covering the words.
Right.
They okay. They were advocates, they liked to remind the rest of us, and they were endowed with holy outrage and an acute awareness of inequality and a passion for tolerance that never quite translated into actual kindness. They wore t-shirts that bore slogans like, quote, "The future is female." They crusaded against, quote, "oppressive dress codes," and they confronted a patriarchal grading system. They were practiced in the art of derailing conversation with accusations of heteronormativity or cultural appropriation. The battles they won, like "we can wear tube tops now," were triumphs of resistance, while those they lost only accentuated the ubiquity of the inequity de jure. No matter how petty and irrational their grievances became, these students eluded criticism from peers, teachers, and administrators alike. Nobody wanted to take them on. After all, who wanted to argue with the pursuit of justice? Um,
Is he gonna say? Is she gonna say anything positive about the movements that she was involved with?
Somewhat.
Okay. Good. Okay. because
Um,
this is what I'm careful of. I'm pretty like this. I understand that a lot of these Wokistani mobs are insane, right? But I always feel like um, I mean, some people might completely. I
dismiss
mean,
what
if
is valuable.
dismiss like I mean, not no side is 100% wrong about everything they say, right? And if you don't highlight the parts that the other side is getting right, I kind of feel like you're, you know, it's kind of like it's very similar to the people who are dismissing how bad the like for example the people who dismiss how crazy the far right is, or the people who dismiss how crazy the Wokistani are, the woke cult is. I feel like sometimes it's very similar to the people who want to represent everything from like they do not say like okay they are bad, but they're kind of working with this truth and this truth to sell their stuff, right? And if you don't mention those things, then you come across as you're just having your own spreading of your propaganda, right? So
Hmm.
it's important for you. And again, it also makes. I think. Do you think it's justified for me to be careful about whether somebody is presenting everything accurately, or is it just or they're trying to get into publish to somewhere like Quillette, and that might make them sometimes exaggerate or misrepresent because they think that this is what the
Is
platform that
desired from that publisher.
yeah
Yeah.
that publisher desires something like this, and so I'm just saying like guys, make sure like there is no verification for what people can say when they're writing an article, right? And so even if it confirms the things that you like or the things you believe, try to try to be skeptical,
Hmm.
right? Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah, and I mean, people can dismiss what is valuable about those things. Like we can wear tube tops now. Like I think that's actually good. Like
Yeah.
wear what you want. Like I don't think that should be
Yeah.
dismissed.
Yeah. Was that did that go? Was that a dismissive? We can wear tube tops now. Is that like a dismissing the importance of people having the freedom to like? Is that like a dismissal of
To
this whole
me,
thing?
it came across that way.
Hmm.
But let's continue.
Okay.
Throughout high school, conversations were had, discourses were dismantled, lived experiences were brandished, and I sat through all of it silently. I was more bored by the whole thing than angry. I had other problems on my hands. I spent my gap year in psychiatric hospitals all over the western half of the country, being treated for an array of mental illnesses and symptoms that no one seemed to understand. A few weeks after I was accepted to colleges no one thought I'd be well enough to attend, I received a diagnosis of autism. It soon became clear that the professional's misunderstanding of my condition had hindered my recovery. The treatments I had attempted and failed tended to be unsuccessful with autistic patients, and the symptoms that had baffled so many clinicians made sense with this new diagnostic context. I was transferred to another hospital where the doctors had experience with patients on the spectrum. Contrary to everyone's expectations, I was discharged by the middle of August, just in time to start my freshman year at Stanford and my foray into advocacy. For most of my life, I had taken my intense introversion, obsessive thinking, and social clumsiness as evidence that there was something deeply wrong with me. Many of the adults around me seemed to agree. I spent most of my adolescence undergoing treatment for a vast constellation of psychiatric symptoms, and I was used to having every morsel of my behavior and cognitions dissected and pathologized. I was too rigid, anxious, obsessive, and compulsive. I didn't socialize enough. I spent too much time on my schoolwork, procrastinating and panicking. My faults were meticulously recorded in medical charts and psychological assessments, an ever growing inventory of ways in which I needed to be fixed. If I took my medication and put enough effort into treatments, the doctors informed by my parents, I'd perhaps one day reach a mythical state of recovery, wherein I would enjoy slumber parties and trips to the mall and consistent achievement with developmental milestones. What a relief that would be for my family, for everyone, for all of my faults to be erased. Um, So a lot of this article is talking about her personal experience, coming to terms in learning how to um, navigate her autism. But as someone who has struggled with severe mental illness, particularly most acutely in my adolescence, I related to a lot of what she said in this
Mm.
paragraph. So throughout this article, I'm not autistic. I don't know what that's like, but I can relate personally to a lot of what she talks about in terms of psychiatric
Mm.
illnesses.
Okay.
And so this whole idea of this like mythical idea of a perfect recovery or being fixed is a theme throughout this that I can relate to.
Do doctors really sell that idea? I almost think like, you know, I always think like some people just have one bad experience with one nurse or one doctor, and then they sometimes misrepresent the entire. Like they're. I mean, given that a lot of doctors and nurses and mental health professionals, they have a lot of like under experience with knowing that things will never be perfect. Do you think is fair that she's kind of like, you know, throwing away the whole institution as if they're selling a dream that would never become true? Because I know that I have friends that talk to their clinicians or their mental health professionals, and they tell me that their they don't sell them dreams that are not going to come true. They give them reality. Like she went through all these different hospitals and different people, and they were all like she's just like saying they were all doing this to her. I don't think like that's fair. I'm not
I
sure.
mean, I don't know about the experiences of
Yeah.
her what she went through in the clinical setting, but I know it is a common societal expectation that once you go through the clinical process that you're just supposed to be fixed.
Right, right,
I
right.
I, I struggled with
Societal.
that. That was
Societal maybe, but I don't think the doctors or the mental health experts, I don't think
it's
they do that.
possible.
Yeah. Anyways.
They're not good, but it's
Yeah.
definitely possible.
Hmm.
Yeah, but it was definitely more of a familial expectation for myself, and I think she highlights that familial expectation throughout this.
Oh, okay.
Um, but no matter how hard I tried, I never achieved this state of normality. By the way, I think she's a really good writer. I
Hmm.
didn't even come close. My efforts to conform to these expectations left me exhausted and furious with myself, convinced of my own incompetence. The autism diagnosis had finally persuaded my parents and doctors that these goals were unattainable and led me to the
Okay.
neurodiversity movement. So, yeah, for myself,
Hmm.
what finally changed was, well, I
You,
attempted suicide and then people took what I was going through seriously because
wow.
that's when I received my proper diagnosis, right?
Right.
So, yeah, that's what it takes for people to adjust their expectations of you sometimes. Um, there, I encountered the unexpected and exhilarating notion that autism was not a disorder to be treated, but a way of being celebrated. You can't fix what isn't broken. Nothing about us without us. Autistic people are the real autism experts. These slogans gave me the confidence to embrace the parts of myself I had despised for so long. I realized that it wasn't the end of the world if I didn't want to make eye contact, that I could flap my hands during a lecture if I wanted to. I could rock back and forth as much as I liked. I could eat meals alone, go to bed early, and turn down party invitations. In short, I could be perpetually, decidedly atypical, and that was
Yeah.
okay.
I like that. I like that. I like this part. I like all of this. I don't like this though. I'm pretty sure personal experiences don't make you an expert. I think the people
Oh boy,
who's
yeah, we don't get into that.
okay.
Um, Yes.
Yeah.
So, well,
But
we
I
have to
like the
move through
rest.
this quickly.
All right.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
it's
Okay, let's
good
continue.
to accept yourself, but not to the point where you allow impairments to just be what they are and not work through them.
Right. And yeah,
Um,
it takes more than you experiencing an illness for you to become an expert at it. It takes people studying thousands and thousands of uh, illnesses and and solutions to them over years, over like being experts, being educated, and being an expert at studying research papers and all that. Even then, you're might be not you're not. you might not be an expert. Okay, so just because like, hey, I mean, don't. Yeah. So don't throw around the word expert so loosely. Okay. If I get cancer, I'm not gonna become an expert at cancer. Okay. But anyways, let's go.
Gosh. Okay. I could have stopped there, contenting myself with just enough disability theory to accept my own skills and limitations before moving on to other pursuits. And I think she's right there. There is value in what is above, but you cannot take it to the point where you allow yourself to live in your impairment.
Right.
Uh, but I didn't. Maybe it was simply teenage self absorption motivated by narcissism. Maybe it had to do with the environment, Stanford's obsession with, quote, centering the marginalized and calling out the privileged. Or maybe it was the memories of the doctors who blamed me for my illness, medications prescribed against my will, the ensuing nightmares that left me dazed and sleepless, the panting, heaving animal fear that still rises in me whenever I hear sirens.
Oof.
For whatever reason, I continue to embrace increasingly radical iterations of the neurodiversity paradigm. I soon stumbled across the social model of disability, according to which individuals are disabled not by the medical conditions or specific diseases, but by a society that refuses to accommodate them. This theory neatly accounted for every painful experience of my past with just one word: ableism.
Mm.
Ableism, the psychiatrist who had shook his head in disgust as I curled on the couch in his office, refusing to speak. You should try taking the books out of her room, he told my parents. There need to be consequences for this negative behavior.
Hmm.
Ableism, my mother's elbow at my shoulder when I was 5, 7, 12, 15. Eyes, Lucy, eyes, look at him in the eyes. Ableism, lying spread eagled in the examination room, the cold stethoscope pressing into the chasm beneath my breasts like an attack, an invasion. Ableism, the world against me and me against the world. This was my first intoxicating taste of empowerment born
Wait,
from
what do you think about ableism? Isn't okay? I mean, I understand some people have different have tried to solve problems people have mentally or physically, uh, in a using bad ideas and bad solutions. But if ableism means, I mean, being able is that's a good thing, isn't it? Right? Being,
hmm
so
But
it.
ableism is
Hmm.
discriminating against people on the basis of their ability.
Okay, ableism is that discriminating against people on the basis of the ability, and it's not so. But ableism is not wanting somebody to become healthier. That is
Less
not
impaired.
ableism. That's a good thing, right? If
Mhm.
somebody is not able and you want them to go from not being able to being able,
We're
for
not able,
right,
less impaired.
less impaired, right? Because the way I'm seeing it is a lot of people on the Wokistani side, they think ableism means that if you think some is it's an improvement for you to go from not being able to hear to being able to hear, that they consider that ableism. But I mean that is objectively better. And if that is ableism, which is not, but if that is ableism, ableism is a good thing. If you can't walk and we all of a sudden make you able to walk, and we are like, yay! And like, why are you celebrating that? That's ableism. I'm like, okay, if that's ableism, then consider me an ableist, right? But that is not what it, right? Like, I mean, that's a good
Oh,
thing. Isn't that a good thing? I'm an ableist if that's what
I
ableism means.
I would not put it that way.
But that is that it is that way. If that's what they mean by ableist, I'm an ableist. Um, Susanna, like there were people, okay, so in our own community, who, there was who saw a video of somebody being happy that a video of somebody there was a viral video of somebody being happy that their child could hear now,
Oh yeah.
and they were criticizing it for being ableist. Like the child couldn't hear, and the child was like hearing for the first time, and people were like, "Why are you celebrating this? This is ableist." I was like, "Well, okay, great. I'm an ableist, then. God damn it! Like, what the hell?" Again, but if you define the ableism as discrimination against people who are yeah, have a disadvantage, obviously that's bad. But if you describe it as being happy, you're like wanting people to be more able, then yeah, ableism is a good thing. But anyways, let's continue.
Um, oh my gosh, that took me back to when I took American Sign Language, and we have this whole course on autism,
Right?
which is discrimination on the basis of hearing ability, and
What
living in
happened?
an autist society, which is, and but I'm that's besides the point. Okay, so this was my first intoxicating taste of empowerment born from victimhood. I was vindicted, exuberant. None of it had been my fault. All my doubts and self hatred and guilt could be laid to rest. I had been the victim not only of circumstance and misfortune, but of oppression. The problem was simple, the solution equally so. I didn't have to change, society did. Um, I think there are ways in which both the society
Yeah,
and individual can change.
it's not either or.
Yeah.
Right.
So at the time, my new outlook seemed imminently rational, not to mention gratifying. I didn't recognize that I had too much emotional stake in the game to perceive things objectively. The implicit dichotomy underlying the social model, which divides the world into victims and perpetrators of ableism, gave me a binary choice. I could notice the ways in which I was privileged, assigning myself to the dominant group, or I could continue to concentrate on my misfortunes, convincing myself that I was innocent and helpless. I could play a constant game of sorting the world into good and bad, dominant and dominated, oppressor and oppressed. I could
Mm.
drift further and further from objectivity. I would grow obsessed with the injustice I saw all around me, and I
Mm.
would label myself the victim every time.
Sounds a lot like Christianity, right? Seeing the sin everywhere, thinking
Hmm.
yeah, dividing the world into pro Jesus or not with Jesus. Very,
Mhm.
I don't know. I get every time I hear about people describing what they felt, the way they looked at the world under the woke dogma. It reminds me of Christian. It give me Christian vibe,
You
right?
get that? You get that flavor in your mouth?
Yes, it's like I recognize this taste, but
Have you ever received the Eucharist?
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
yeah. You get a
yeah.
little bit of the taste of the Eucharist in your mouth. Um,
No, I used to, yeah, I used to go church hunting, and so I have a lot of experience in different churches. Yeah, just
um,
okay.
what were you hunting for?
I'm just trying to see, like, meeting with people, talking to them about their religion,
Hmm.
um, see what it's all about. So I remember going from one church to another, and just have this. It was interesting actually. They were so different. There were different experiences in each one of them. But
Hmm.
yeah, we could do another live stream about that later. But let's, yeah,
I
yeah,
know,
go
because
on.
now I want to ask you about
Yeah.
receiving the Eucharist because that is, as a Catholic, that's not okay. You can't do that, sir.
Wait, that wasn't. Yeah. Why? Why can't you do that?
Well, if you are not baptized, if you have not done the sacrament of reconciliation, you're not allowed to receive your first communion.
Yeah, that was not in the Catholic Church.
Okay, exactly. Because
Yeah.
Protestants, those heretics, they do things differently. Ugh,
Yeah.
Episcopalians. Ugh. Anyways,
Anyways, all right.
um, I um, I quickly learned to identify even the smallest traces of ableism in my surroundings. The personal was political, so I didn't worry too much about the poverty, abuse, or any of the other serious challenges disabled people face. Instead, I zeroed in on the minutia. The word stupid, a building without elevators, an offensive headline on BuzzFeed. During my rhetorics class's field trip to an art gallery, I scrutinized the building for evidence of ableism, triumphantly noticing that the flashing lights in the exhibit may have triggered a seizure in a person with epilepsy. I don't remember any of my other observations of the exhibit, nor do I recall the in class discussion that followed. I was looking for injustice where I found it. QED.
Okay, so see, like, here's the thing. This sounds like obsessive, right? But at the same time, whatever movement led to people, I mean, not to this extreme, but aren't we happy that we live in countries that they look at buildings and they try to make it more accessible to people who are Not able. Like I like that
That's
about.
actually a huge deal. So I did a huge research project in high school about the disabilities movement in America because people don't learn about it. And this, like the ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, is one of the best things that ever happened to our country.
Right.
Because one thing I learned is that for people with certain types of mobility disabilities, the discrimination is physical.
Mm-hmm.
It's you
Yeah.
cannot cross the street because
Right.
you're in a mobilized wheelchair and there's no curb for you to
Mm-hmm.
go down. There's no ramp on the curb. So
Right.
you
Right. Right.
can't go across the sidewalk because you wouldn't be able to cross the other side, you know? Or a building without elevators, that's a big problem. That's against
Right.
the ADA. That building can be sued for discrimination.
Right.
So
So
these
I
are
mean,
valuable things.
yeah, this is why I'm telling people, like, again, this is a good example for not letting your anti-woke stuff to go to come to dismiss a lot of valuable things that these movements have accomplished, right? I mean, this sounds obsessive and ridiculous, and we could point at it and be like, "Oh my God, that's crazy," or whatever you want to call it. But at the same time, you know, these are built on the back of movements that actually made the world an easier, these countries, again, not the world actually, made these countries a better place to live for people who are not physically able. And that's a
Hmm.
great thing that we need to celebrate. And in fact, that's something that a lot of people from the book don't realize how lucky they are to live in a country like United States or Canada that does care about its, you know, n- um, less privileged, not able. How do you say it? Not. What's the opposite of able? Unable. I mean, it is unable, but I don't think that's
Disabled.
what they disabled. Yes, disabled, disabled citizens, right? I mean, these people would be like, yeah, we need to push even harder, but and get more for disabled people. But how lucky we are that we live in the United States, or like not like in, I don't know, Iran, where this is not a major thing that the government pushes for, right? So there needs to be gratitude as well as pushing for more. Okay, so
Hmm.
and I don't think the Wokistani people are the type of people who would appreciate and be grateful for living in a country like United States. Not all of them, some of them do, but okay,
Okay,
yeah.
I agree. Occasionally, I felt myself gravitating towards truth. I would read an article by an autistic person who did want to be cured, or I would hear an argument in favor of behavioral treatment, or I would realize, if only for a split second, that I am actually, and then I would recoil, frantically drowning my doubt in excuses and accusations. The author of that article had internalized their impression. He too was brainwashed by society with a capital S to know what he was talking about. Besides, how could I have forgotten the sanctity of my lived experience, my vow to never surrender to reason? Thus, I insulated myself from even the slightest traces of disagreement. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words would force me to challenge my most dearly held beliefs and cope with the fact that I might be wrong. And
Hmm.
that would be too much to bear.
Yeah. One thing that we need to be careful. A lot of the people from our side would think like this is something unique about people from the woke cult.
No.
It is. It is not. It's also this is how religious people behave. This is why people from different political groups behave, and this is also how atheists behave, right? So
It's
this
a
is a
human thing.
it's a very human thing, yeah. But yeah, but I do agree that a lot of the people that do not, I mean, you could see it a lot in the World Cup, but just don't think like they have monopolized that. They haven't. But anyways, yeah.
Well, especially because they've weaponized language in a very specific way. But, anyways,
Yes. Yes, they have.
um, the first week of March, I co hosted a Disability Day of Mourning vigil at Hillel at Stanford, with Hillel at Stanford. Um, I had gotten the idea from one of the many autism blogs I read regularly. Each year, the disability community came together in remembrance of people with disabilities who had been murdered by their caregivers.
Whoa.
This is one of the reasons why I'm very passionate about disability rights. Um, these are appalling crimes that tend to be taken far less seriously than killings of the non disabled, which many advocates see as a symptom and consequence of widespread ableism. I spent weeks poring over speeches from previous vigils, scrolling through the names of the dead as I prepared to draft my own statement, which ended up endorsing a dystopian vision of unendurable oppression. There's a quote from this. These murders are the product of a society that sees autistic people at best as high functioning and at worst as violent, soulless, and less than human. Even when these beliefs aren't expressed directly, they emerge constantly as the subtext in nearly every discussion of autism. As a society, we can't allow these ideologies to flourish and then wonder why autistic people get K'd. Um,
Those
keep
aren't that bad. This is not that bad.
um,
Uh, yeah.
the at worst as violent, soulless, and less than human. I don't know.
I mean, yeah, this is okay.
That's
Yeah,
very
I agree.
possible.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you live, and this is very true in non North American or Western European countries. Like
Mm,
sometimes when you look at other countries, um, and you see how far behind they are in the way they treat, like, I don't know, people who have mental disabilities, or when it comes to the way they talk about women rights or gay rights or trans rights. I was like, maybe we could borrow some of the woke people from America. Maybe you guys need a little bit of that. I mean, like, sometimes like, I mean, this is not woke. This is, I mean, pretty. I think this is pretty on point, to be fair. But I feel like, the level of discourse in countries like United Kingdom or France or Germany or United States is so light years away ahead of in these other countries. And like sometimes I get tempted to even go overcorrect and be like, can we like send these other countries some of the woke mob? Maybe just I don't know. Maybe it would be it would be good for both sides. Maybe the Pakistani people to be like, oh my god, you guys are so behind. Maybe I wasn't so. I needed to be grateful for what the United
I
States were.
I would like to give an example. I am in communication with a closeted atheist in Pakistan who literally works with cases of children with cognitive disabilities. He sends me pictures of children chained to walls.
Oof! Wow, Jesus, yeah, that's crazy. That's
So
and
yeah,
that's
they could use a bit of this.
Yeah, they could use a bit. I mean, it would be good for both sides. The Wookiee people would be more grateful for the countries like, United States, Canada, or Western European countries, and maybe some of that push. I don't know. We should like send them as send. You know how the Pope send the Crusaders towards towards Jerusalem, not because they wanted to get Jerusalem, but because all these warrior class people had nothing to do, and the Pope was worried about, like, oh my God, these people are so they all want they're kind of scary. We need to give them something to do,
Yeah.
so let's just like, oh yeah, go get to Jerusalem. This is go bring back the kingdom of God back to, like, and they send them somewhere else. So maybe you could do that with the woke
Send them to
cult.
Pakistan.
Like, hey guys, like, look at this, like, go over there. They don't need you there, and they export them all. So we started a new crusade. Anyways, let's continue.
Okay. So this speech sought to elucidate the causes of the deaths in question, but it is far more about my own psyche. By the time I delivered it, I saw a world dominated by an inescapable sinister force that posed a threat to the very well-being of every disabled person, including me. As ominous as this tableau appears, it was also incredibly seductive. Who wouldn't want to be the hero working to defeat such unthinkable evil?
Hmm.
Living in fight mode was electrifying. Zealotry imbued my life with intensity, every moment brimming with vivid symbolism and apocalyptic meaning. I was on fire, and at the same time, I was fragile. I never would have admitted it, but I think beneath all the slogans and bravado, I knew how precarious my worldview really was, how quickly it would collapse under scrutiny or rigorous analysis.
Okay, so this is a feeling that religion also gives you.
And this is
Uh,
what I related very heavily to. I was like, "Oh, you just yes."
yeah, But here's the thing: we as atheists, we point to this and be like, when especially like religious people, they think like they're in a fight for good and evil, right? And they are on the side of good, and the world is like corrupted, and it just makes you feel very significant and important, right? The problem is that we cannot dismiss the desire for this feeling, right? Like this is, I think, one mistake that we have made in the atheist circles, to especially with religious people, to be like, oh, like our response is like, you're not that important, right? Or that, is take a chill pill or something like that, right? It's not that crazy, it's not that simple. It's not like this black and white. It's not like you're on the side of good and light and everything else is on the side of evil and darkness, right? Um, but the problem is that you can't just like we as atheists, if we don't feel that need, we cannot just be like, okay, other people should like not feel this. This is like something that is hardwired in our brain, right? The
Hmm.
desire to feel significant and part of something important. So we need to actually come up with an alternative rather than completely dismissing this desire. Maybe instead of like, we need to be like, tell people like, okay, fine, you want to be part of a battle? Can you at least do some? Let's come up with a way to objectively measure whether or not what we're fighting for is actually making people
The
the
utility
world,
fighting
yeah,
for.
is making the world a better place. Like maybe like, okay, fine, be on the side of good against evil, right? But can we do it with a dose of skepticism and empirical analysis, and and again, if even if you want to make yourself feel righteous and mm, very very important in the battle, okay, but do it with a dose of me admit, okay, fine, you want to feel like very good and noble, add skepticism as a noble trait, virtue signal with your skepticism, all right? So we cannot ask people to not do virtue signaling, okay,
Yeah,
because you need to advertise that, you need to feel like you're good, okay, and you need other people to guys, if you don't feel the need to that, that's you, okay? Other people have that desire, they have that need, you
it's
need to
part of
be able.
social psychology. It's
Yes, you
how
need.
we determine who is in the in group and who is in the out group of any given group.
Right, right.
Period.
The problem is, if you're so full of yourself, you're not going to question your you're not going to keep trying to question yourself to make sure that you're self-reflecting all the time, right? The way maybe we could solve that is to make skepticism one of the things that you virtue signal with, and changing your position, admitting that you're wrong, one of the things that you virtue signal with. Maybe that's the solution. Anyways, these are the things that keeps me up at night. I'm thinking about, like, because again, guys, we atheists and non-tribal people, we're weird. Okay, we cannot just be like, why are more people not like us? Okay, if we keep
Mhm.
asking ourselves, like, we're not gonna grow. Okay, people's brains are wired to desire these things. We have to come up with a different solution. Anyways, let's continue.
Yeah, and I think when you that sense of zealotry
Mm.
is it needs to be checked very closely, right?
Mm.
It's not, I don't think, always a bad thing, but you need to be aware about when you are particularly zealous of something, because that will um, uh, degrade your willingness to be skeptical. So,
Mm.
for example, like what I feel extremely zealous about right now is promoting and defending secularism and preventing the persecution of atheists, blasphemers, and non believers, right?
Right.
But I can identify, if you can't tell by my videos, that I'm very zealous about it. But I need to make sure that that doesn't stop me from thinking critically,
Right.
that I don't challenge myself. Okay. So to ward off the ever present threat of reason, I hid behind an ever growing sense of defiant helplessness. The social psychology of learned helplessness is very interesting, and I think it plays into this.
Mm.
I continued to extend my repertoire of victimhood, learning to soak up other people's indignation and to nurture borrowed resentment.
Mm.
I had built my identity on the paradoxical symbiosis of empowerment and inability. My victimhood absolved me of agency and therefore blame. Everything was someone else's fault. I spent spring break filming a 7-part series of sanctimonious videos in which I explained autism to unenlightened viewers. One segment involved an earnest evaluation of autism awareness products. Quote, this keychain is incredibly offensive. While another spoke sharply about the notion of treating autism. We don't want to be cured. And okay, side note, I don't think cure is a good way of conceptualizing recovery.
Mm,
Recovery is a good way of conceptualizing your own illness.
right.
There is no cure. It's an ongoing process to become less impaired and to cope with your impairments. That's what I do in my life.
Right.
Okay, continuing. In a third, I railed against the assumption that some autistics were, quote, low functioning. Quote, one third of the Autism Self Advocacy Network's board members are non speaking, but they're still in charge of an incredible organization, so please do not use functioning labels. Um,
This language policing makes you lose allies, I think. I don't know.
Incredibility, because you have to use words to describe the differences in people.
Right.
Like, just because there are differences in people, that doesn't mean that they should be treated as unequal.
Yeah, but
Um,
it's very neat. Okay, even if there are certain words that actually are not helpful, and
mhm,
it's good to inform people that maybe you're not being helpful by using those words. You need to be very forgiving of people who don't are not familiar as much as you are with them.
mhm,
You know what I mean? Like if you
yeah,
want to correct people, correct people. Just be like
mhm.
mindful that if you're being a dick about it, it might backfire. But anyways,
Yeah, and just a side note on the thing about like cures. Like, I don't think there are cures, but like as someone who has family members who are on the autism spectrum, like I don't want my family members to be cured, but I do want to see them happier,
right.
and they'd be
I mean,
happier if they learned how to navigate their impairments.
so see, a lot of people don't understand that maybe if you're happier and you're now okay, average people like call that cured, and you're like, oh, that is not cured. This is something else. Like, oh, that's cured is like brings this and this is why you shouldn't call it cured. Yeah, but average people don't go about think about the true meanings of the words that they use and be like picky. Like, you're gonna lose people that are sympathetic to you if you're like, oh, cure is not the right word. But like, okay, but you're happy now and think you're okay and you used to be much worse, so why can't I call? I mean, I understand that if you're deeply involved in these things and you're thinking about it, you why you don't want to call it cured. But again, because other people use words that are sound similar with each other interchangeably because they just mean close, it's close enough, right? Like, people don't think about the difference between the meaning of the word ethics and morality, right? They use interchangeably, and you want to be like, "Oh, that's not ethics, that's morality," and people are like, "Okay, I don't know, like." Then maybe I just stop having this conversation with you. How about
Yeah,
that?
we're too. Yeah.
Right, right. All right. Let's continue.
Um, my tone was terse, at once pleading and irritated. I was noticeably nervous. Wait, scroll down because the banner's covering it.
Oh,
No,
scroll
up,
up.
sorry. I wonder if I had considered the counter argument to what I was saying, that being on the board of such an organization necessitates a certain level of cognitive ability that most autistics don't have, that no amount of justification on my part would change the reality of their disabilities, that no one had appointed me as the spokesperson for the disabled. If I was aware of such points, I did a good job of hiding it. Quote, please don't call autism a disease, I concluded, reaching out to shut off the camera. April had just begun. The death toll of the pandemic was rising, the economy was crashing, emergency rooms were overflowing, the disabled were facing care shortages and medical discrimination, and my greatest concern was semantics.
All right, look at the comment that I
Well,
highlighted.
autism
Oh,
isn't a disease. So that's actually like correct, but I
okay.
understand that she's saying my greatest concern was the semantics in the face of all this other
Wait,
stuff.
how is autism not a disease? Can you explain?
It's a disorder. It's a genetic condition.
Okay, but what's a disease then?
Well, let me find the technical definition of a disease.
It's not, it's not. It's a disorder, not a disease. Isn't disease anything that causes you any biologically causes you any kind of inconvenience?
Um,
Disease. I mean, we're not using it.
under certain definitions,
Oh, look,
it
in the
works.
definition of a disease, disorder is in the definition of a disease. So you're saying it's a disorder, not a disease, but the definition of the disease has disorder in it. So disease is like it's a disorder of structure or function in a human, animal, or plant, especially on one that products specific signs or symptoms, or that affects a specific location and is not simply a direct result of physical injury. That's autism. It's a disorder of structure or function in a human. Yeah, okay, that's autism with specific signs or symbols. Yeah, symptoms. Yeah.
Interesting. This is contrary to what I was taught in my translational neuroscience classes.
I mean, I guess people don't want to call it disease because disease is like a negative connotation associated with it, but I don't know, but it's a disease. Like I'm not trying to be insulting by calling it a disease. It's not like having a disease is like should be like a. It's not like it should. It's not like having a disease is an insult,
Hmm. Should we
right?
read this comment by Aleph real quick?
Yeah. Can you please read that? Yeah.
Yeah, so Aleph, I saw in the chat earlier, he was saying that he's actually a therapist that works with autistic clients. So this is really valuable insight. Um, He's saying, agreed, the functioning label is hard to replace medically. The further away we get from terms like functioning and treatment, it's hard to get insurance companies to cover therapy. Oh my gosh. Well, the relationship between insurance and clinical care and translational medicine is like a whole different topic that I can't even get into right now. But yeah, good point.
Dirty Dancer is saying isn't a disease transmittable? Not transmissible. Not necessarily. Autism is a birth defect. Yeah, but some diseases are a birth defect. Where is this? Ethan is saying you could call it a birth disease and it would be accurate. Yeah. I mean,
Uh,
I don't understand why it's not a disease. Okay, but let's continue. Yeah,
well,
you want to say something?
I've just always known it as autism spectrum disorder. And anyways, let's move on.
Yeah, I do. I do want to mention that it could one dangerous territory that we could gender dysphoria, right? I'm not gonna get into it, but is that a disease? And is it transphobic to consider it a disease? I mean, is it it is I think that could be considered discriminatory against trans people, but if it's causing them the inconvenience that they need and the cure I don't know if cure is the right word, but the solution to it is to either get hormone therapy or gender change, sex exchange operation or whatever, right? If there is a solution to it, aren't we addressing? I mean, okay, so for example, if we call gender dysphoria a disease, some people might.
Can we
I
even
know.
get into this right now?
No, just let me tell you just one line, okay? If you call gender dysphoria a disease, people might think that's transphobic. But at the same time, if you do call it a disease, you are promoting the idea that the hormone therapy or gender sex exchange operations need to be covered by insurance companies because that's the cure to this disease, right? Like, isn't that helpful to people, to trans people, to call it a disease? I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud.
No.
Okay, I'm just thinking out loud. I mean, if you call it a disease, then more transgender people should be able to justify getting, um,
It's already covered in the DSM-5 as a disorder.
I know. Okay, but disorder. I don't understand the difference between a disorder and a disease. I'm just thinking out loud. I know I could be wrong, but it's sad that I can't even think about this long without people coming at it. Yeah, anyways, let's continue. We got look at this. Look at the reaction you're having. Like this is the problem. This is a problem. I, as somebody who's trying to get educated about this, can't even ask questions before people
No,
like,
you can ask questions.
ooh,
I'm
no,
just
no, no. But imagine if I ask us about anything else, people won't get this uncomfortable. I'm just wondering. I would like to be educated, but as soon as I touch this subject, people are like, ooh, oh no, ooh, this is touchy stuff. Like this is sensitive stuff, and I know, but you're right, Susanna. Like I know because this is it's not. I'm not criticizing you. We do live in an environment where touching this stuff is like really scary to even talk about. We
live
could
nerve.
lose. Yeah, I mean we could lose our platform, but I can't even wonder about this without getting worried about getting canceled, like losing this YouTube channel, right? Like I want to be educated about it, but even talking about it is kind of like anyways, let's continue.
Okay, so that took a turn. So in mid-June, the academic year came to a premature halt in the wake of George Floyd's death. I pored over lists of required reading for allies, 40 bail funds you should support, 120 brilliant young adult novels by Black authors, 3,934 things you can do to make up for your internalized white supremacy. I contemplated a major in comparative studies in race and ethnicity, signed petitions, and dutifully absorbed the messages of self-hatred and complicity. I attended Stanford's Black Lives Matter vigil, led by an organizer who added the necessary S's to the term folks and wore a brittle, venomous expression. She began her remarks with a warning, quote, "If you don't feel comfortable here, you might ask yourself why that is, and whether you are part of the problem," end quote. Her words stung, and I drank them in eagerly. I was there to repent. I
Hmm.
took a certain perverse pleasure in this self-flagellation. So, by a way of atonement, I donated to bail funds, seduced by the reward of finding myself on the right side of history. Um, the last week of classes was more or less canceled. Go protest something, said our biology professor. Wait, I can't see the rest of it.
Hmm.
Abruptly, go protest or something, said our biology professor, abruptly concluding our final lecture. Summer heat settled in, thick and heavy. Any thoughts of autism advocacy were drowned out by my morally sanctioned self-hatred. I did everything I thought I was supposed to do. I downloaded podcasts and scrolled through articles and liked and shared and wondered what it would take for me to feel redeemed. The aspersions I had cast on others were coming back to bite me. They were taking a toll on my sanity.
Hmm.
I spiraled deeper into self loathing, unable to shake the accusations of racism and bigotry from my mind, crippled by the guilt that I had initially embraced. The harder I tried to atone, the more helpless I became. I just want to be a good person, I texted a friend midway through June. I'm just trying to educate myself about injustice. I don't know if I can keep it up. The bar just kept rising.
Yeah.
Read this, she responded, forwarding me a link to new discourses.
Oof. Oh no. This is like what it is. I mean, good, but that. Oh no, for her, like new discourse. You guys know what this is, right?
Well,
Is
we'll
this the
get into
one?
it.
Is this what I thought? Think it is? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Um, I tell people that day marked the end of my activist career. I pored over James Lindsay's writings before finding my way to a constellation of other sites, YouTube channels, podcasters, and writers I had never before considered.
You
Every
went. Wait. Just like okay. I like James Lindsay's this new discourses, right? But I don't know if I. She just went from 0 to 100 like immediately. Like is this like I don't know if she was even ready to for James Lindsay's content. Like how do you think like this and then go to James Lindsay's website and your head not explode? But that's interesting. Okay, let's go.
um
Sorry,
every
YouTube.
every dissident thought I had learned to shove away over the years. How can someone be a non-binary lesbian? What's so bad about cultural appropriation? Must we make everything about race? Returned, but now I had realized that I could ask these questions and the world would keep turning. There, so what is happening here is that the thought terminating cliches, as they're called in psychology, are starting to crumble.
Mm.
So, thought terminating cliches are walls that we build through long processes of indoctrination, basically, that are taught. These are cliches that are triggered when we're confronted with critical information to
Right.
shut down critical thinking and doubt and dissonant thought, like she said. So this is that wall starting to crumble. And for me, what that was secular jihadists.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Nice.
I could ask these questions and the world will keep turning. There was a social justice outside of social justice, capital letters, and perhaps less justice in it than I had assumed. Oh, Retard Skeptic is giving the example of a thought terminating cliche. Satan is tempting you with logic.
Yes, more
So people are literally taught that the doubts that they have is Satan. That is how faith is, insulated. I began to chart it out. I began to chart it all out on a giant sheet of butcher paper, trying to make sense of the insanity that had gripped me. I had developed a sense of infallibility. Key words here, infallibility, that doubled as a defense mechanism, using false notions of safety and aggression to shelter myself from disagreement.
Interesting.
Unwilling to tolerate the dissonance that conflict might bring. I had built a sense of fragility through emotional reasoning and catastrophization, relishing my own loss of agency. In the process, I had moved further and further from reason, while deluding myself about the extent of my denial.
Yeah, Christianity. Very much like Christianity.
With all of this laid out before me, and this is all, if you guys are interested in how this works psychologically, I suggest you read Combating Cult Mind Control by Stephen Hassan.
Wait. Dirty Dancer. Please don't pound the table. It is very ableist. Oh, yes.
With all of this laid out before me.
You know what this is?
Yeah, that's how you clap in ASL.
Yeah. I'm doing this for Dirty Dancer because this is too ableist, right? Yes.
It's not even necessarily about the sound. For people who can't hear, you have to give a visual representation of applause.
Okay, but then what about people who can't see? Then you should clap and do this at the same time.
Oh my God.
Yeah, because people are like, oh, you shouldn't do this because there are people that can't hear, so you should do this instead. I was like, then what about people who can't see but they can hear? So you should go like, yeah.
I guess it depends on the audience.
I don't know.
So with all of this laid out before me, I could no longer ignore the fact that my obsession with justice hadn't made me a good advocate. It had made me unbearable. My prolonged and pointless exercise in hubris had left me exhausted and miserable. It boiled down to this. Did I want to keep living this way, or did I want to change? I chose the latter. I decided to stop fighting for justice, to swap vague and grandiose aspirations for the loose ends of everyday life. I no longer wanted to rid the world of ableism, but I do want to be kind to others and memorize Russian verbs and gain followers on my blog and return library books on time and get more people access to mental health first aid training and remember my friends' birthdays and listen to indie rock and research psychosis and brush up on my French. And none of this fits into a neat dichotomy of right versus wrong or good versus evil. I wanted to believe that my suffering could be explained by some sinister, ubiquitous force of oppression, but the truth is messier and less gratifying. There were no lurking demons or plots against me, just genetic misfortune and a broken healthcare system and a well-meaning but ultimately unhelpful clinicians.
Hey, don't throw them all under the bus. There's so many good ones there too. Not all of them are unhelpful, but anyways.
But she didn't say all.
Well, she kind of didn't say some. We could say some or many or something.
Personal experience.
Okay, fine.
Against me.
Fine.
Oh my God. I am neither hero nor villain. The understanding that those things aren't about me at the end of the day. I don't matter much. Wait, I am neither hero nor villain. The understanding that most things aren't about me, that at the end of the day I don't matter much, has come as both a disappointment and a relief. I've let go of the need to seek out constant verification that I am oppressed and disadvantaged. My sense of humor has returned. Oh, that was a big one for me. I've come to recognize the greatest irony of my forays into activism. In my quest to draw constant attention to my developmental abnormalities, I ended up acting in the most developmentally normal way possible.
Mm.
There is nothing less unique than a teenage girl insisting that no one else in the entire world understands her. Um,
Ah.
uh, the
Wait, not a teenage girl. This is just a teenage thing. This is why, as a teenager, you're more likely to be able to be recruited for the Wokistani cult or the far right groups. Or religion, you find religion in your teenage life, and this is why for thousands of years, recruiting people to fight battles for other people's causes was usually from teenagers, right? This is
Mhm.
why, if you go look at the Iran-Iraq War, Iran managed to recruit millions of volunteers for people from teenagers who are just willing to go die for this new revolution, right? And this is why teenagers become, start getting interested in the communist revolution or anything like that. Because it's like it's us against the world, and that's like that, right? So they join a cause because nobody understands them except this new group that they just found.
Mm.
Yeah. Just
Oh.
teenage rebellious the rebellious nature the rebellious nature of teenagers is such a powerful tool from you to upgrade your cult to a religion or to a much bigger movement. Than you go to you there's two groups of people: poor people who are just tired of whatever is ruling over them right now and they just want to break the entire system, and teenagers. Poor people and teenagers is how you upgrade your movement. But anyways,
Well, and the psychologically vulnerable, which is how
ooh,
teenagers fit into this.
yeah.
So hey James. um the more I determined the more determined I was to resist inequality, the more I conformed, ceding my emotional stability to strangers on the internet and uncritically parroting neurodiversity doctrine. Over recent months, in moving away from autism advocacy, I've rediscovered my sense of self. I'm unafraid to speak my mind and stray from the crowd. I can be alone without feeling lonely. It certainly doesn't take victimhood for me to know who I am, and I would rather demonstrate my character through action than stifle it with slogans. Mm.
Mm.
Since the start of the summer, my existence has grown peaceful. I have many reasons for despair and many more for hope. The world went from an ideological war zone to a beautiful, flawed, wondrous place. That and the only thing that has changed was me.
It's good. I would appreciate articles like this if they come out of whatever they were involved in and take some good things away from it. Maybe I don't know, like don't complete. Maybe like highlights. You know what? These are the things that was good about it, and I learned from it. I don't know, like because when you discover that you were part of a cult or something, there was something wrong about the um, movement that you were associated with. I do want to make sure that you don't encourage overcorrectness, right? Just like the woke cult is an overcorrection to real problems, um, like, you know, disabled people were not being treated properly, or there is anti-black discrimination, there is misogyny, there is transphobia, there is homophobia, and there's a lot of civil rights movements that has managed to accomplish a lot for people in the United States or Canada or Western European countries. These are very valuable movements that were addressing real problems, and now some people are taking those, jumping on the back of those very successful movements that accomplish a lot, and they're doing some overcorrections and they're being unhelpful in many different areas, right? But so that was an overcorrection, but now what's happening is the anti social justice warrior movement or the anti woke movement is now trying to fight back against this woke dogma, and they're doing their own overcorrection. They're doing an overcorrection to this overcorrection. So what I'm saying is, like, as much as we want to go after the woke dogma,
Hmm.
we have to make sure that we don't repeat the same mistake again, because now the anti-social justice warrior crowd are going out and like dismissing to they point out how crazy some of these woke narratives are, and then they go farther by dismissing real discrimination, real racism, real bigotry, real transphobia, real homophobia, real misogyny, and like, yeah, it's nothing to see. There's nothing to see here because look at these woke people. That means there's nothing to see here. No. I mean, there's still a lot of problems here. So again, I do hope that people who come out of the woke cult, if they want to come and expose the problems that they have with it, it's helpful if you mention,
Mm-hmm.
I'm still against. I still want to fight for this, and that. I
Yeah.
still want to. I still think there's value in trying to make the world a better place for disabled people in these ways. And I feel like these movements, there were some good in them, and there's a lot of good in them. And
Mm-hmm.
this, Anyways, I think it's important to add that.
I completely agree. I mean, we can't just throw away like what has um, increased the prosperity and happiness of so many people, right?
Hmm.
Just because some people are taking certain elements of it and letting the perfect be the enemy of the good.
Right.
Um, yeah, these are extremely valuable movements,
Right.
particularly the disability rights.
I do need to go eat. I'm
Yes, me too.
starving.
I'm starving.
Yeah. Do you want to add anything before we go?
um, no,
All right.
I
You
enjoyed
just
talking to you.
Yeah, me too. Guys, subscribe.
Subscribe.
Subscribe to the Do it now. Okay, please. Oh wait. I'm not faker. I don't understand this. Anyways, yes, please come, guys. Did you enjoy it? Please do it. Okay, subscribe. Do it now and go find us more people.